Welcome, all hunters, anglers, trappers, and shooters, to the only fish and wildlife conservation podcast that goes behind the scenes of the business of conservation, the Connecting with Conservation podcast. Our podcast is hosted by John Gassett from the Wildlife Management Institute and Jim Cucaruto of the Outdoor Stewards of Conservation Foundation. John and Jim will talk with experts from all sectors of the conservation arena about their passion for conserving the great outdoors. So please welcome our hosts of the Connecting with Conservation podcast, John and Jim.
Welcome to Connecting with Conservation. I'm John Gassett with the Wildlife Management Institute and your co-host. And I'm here with my good friend and also co-host, Jim Cucaruto.
All right. Hello. Good day to everybody. And, the Connecting with Conservation podcast was a concept that we thought would be a good idea to let people know about how conservation is funded. And believe it or not, I'm learning a lot about how conservation is funded, even after 15 years. And that's kind of due to one of the guests that we have on here today, Dave Matheny, who's with Silencer Shop, and he's going to talk a little bit about suppressors and silencers and the connection there to conservation with that as well. So I'm looking forward to it. So Dave, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? And
Okay. Yeah. Dave Matheny, owner, founder of Silencer Shop. Started, I think we just hit the 15-year mark. So it's been going for a little while, and we're the largest silencer distributor in the country.
So Silencer Shop, where are you guys based out of? And are you a manufacturer or just a seller of suppressors?
Yeah, we're a distributor and essentially a reseller of the top manufacturers that are out there. We're based in Austin, Texas, just a little bit north. I consider everything outside of Austin to be kind of back in Texas, and we're kind of in the back in Texas area.
I live in Kentucky, and we say the same thing about Fort Knox. It's a big hole in the middle of Kentucky that nobody really owns, or the military does, but we don't. I've been to Austin. I understand your situation there.
So 15 years, congratulations. What kind of was the spark that made you look into doing this? Because 15 years ago, there was a little taboo against the suppressors. I mean, I was scared about even how to go about getting one.
Yeah, it wasn't much before that. I didn't even know they were legal. So there's my son was born, and I've got 3 kids. My middle son was born 100% deaf in his right ear. I was working as a computer programmer for VMware at the time. And as I was taking him hunting, because I was super involved in the Texas Youth Hunting Program, which I really think they're a fantastic program. But take him hunting, and man, the little ADD boy is what I'd call him. He'd bounce around in the blind, wouldn't wear the stupid muffs. We're really worried about his hearing in his good ear, right? Because he was 100% deaf in one, 100% good in the other. So I started looking into suppressors, and that's how I wound up getting my first one. And it was a horrible experience. I mean, everything about it. I won't go into detail, but almost didn't get it at all. So I bought a second one from a local guy who'd been doing it for a long time and had a very similar experience. And then I thought, and really just for background, I loved my job. I'm not one of those serial entrepreneur type people. I liked what I was doing. So I was thinking side gig. I'll just help people locally, help them with the paperwork. And it just straight up exploded. It's been on a growth trajectory ever since. And honestly, I love doing it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, other than the time burden, and that's getting shorter, you've taken the complications out of it for a customer that only buys 1 or 2.
Yeah, even the times. So you think this time last year, we were quoting a 9-month wait, and now it's like 3 days. So it is crazy how fast people are getting them right now.
And I bought mine through my consulting business about 5 or 6 years ago, and it was 16 months before I got it in hand. And I'm like, it's hard to build a business around a 16-month wait period,
That is exactly right. That's always been our biggest hang up.
Yeah.
But luckily it's kind of going away now.
Well, that's good. That's good. So just a question I have, because I've hunted, we obviously we commented on your black buck there, and I've hunted in both South Africa and Namibia, and, in everywhere else I've been pretty much hunting, suppressors are pretty commonly available. And as a matter of fact, expected. I show up with my Browning 300 Win Mag with a Boss system on it, and all the guides cringe because they're so used to having suppressed rifles they hate it when an unsuppressed rifle's on their property. So,
Yeah, I was just in Africa probably 3 or 4 months ago, and every single one, I just used their guns. I didn't travel with mine, and every single one of their guns had a can on it. This is the second time I've gone, and it was the same thing last time. It's amazing how the rest of the world views suppressors compared to the United States.
yeah. Yeah, South Africa, you can't own a semi-automatic rifle.
Yeah, that's true.
You have to have a bolt action, but you can buy a suppressor over the counter.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
But it makes so much sense for not only hunting, but obviously target shooting as well. I mean, maybe even more so, right? Because of noise ordinances and stuff in towns and stuff. So, what would you say kind of is the breakdown of sales for suppressors or silencers? Is it more for hunting, for target shooting? Do you have ballpark idea on how that sales go? Or
I do suspect that it's starting to shift. I think historically, it's most people get into them. They'll buy a 22 can, or they'll buy a 30 cal can just to see how it works. They're thinking home defense, that kind of stuff. And I think as wait times get lower, we're able to synchronize more with hunting seasons, because most people don't think about hunting season until about a month and a half before hunting season, if that, right? And so they're rushing out to buy everything, and they think, okay, I'll get the suppressor next year because it's too late. Now, all of a sudden, we're in a world where you can buy a suppressor and, sheesh, you could buy it in August, September and have it for hunting season, no problem, right? It is definitely shifting more towards hunting, which I'm happy about. I think that's a fantastic use case for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've Jim and I both been around a lot of folks that hunt. We both hunt. It's like just, the difference between me using mine and my wife's a new hunter, and, putting the suppressor on a rifle really helped her. She's a frequent shooter, but not worrying about, it helps with muzzle blast. It cuts the noise way down. She does better. She shoots better with the suppressor. And I think a lot of people find that once they put one on, you initially look at it, it's like, man, it's going to add a lot of weight. It's adding 8 inches of length on my rifle. Yeah, but the trade-offs are worth it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, they 100% are worth it. And I think even people who have shot for years will shoot better with a suppressor. I think as a general rule, I'll shoot however many rounds and then I'll dry fire a few, right? Just to make sure I'm not flinching. The suppressor, you notice with it on, you develop less of a flinch between those dry firing sessions, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And getting back target recovery, getting back on the target, it's, instead of a 6-inch muzzle kick, you got, nothing. You literally can stay on target pretty much the whole time. So no, yeah, I'm a big fan, and I shoot both. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about is because, I think, for better or for worse, one of the things we've done as an industry is, the misnomer of silencer versus suppressor. I've shot a lot of them in different situations. I shoot subsonic through with a 300 blackout. And it's like, they're not silent. They still make noise. You shoot, subsonic stuff, and it takes the supersonic crack out of it, and you can knock a lot of the muzzle blast out, but you're still going to hear the gun. And I think folks think what they see in the movies as, these little things that make no noise. And that's really, you probably can, there's a highly specialized stuff. You might can get something close to that, but what we're talking about is not, it's just a safer way to do it for your hearing and keeps your neighbors from being disturbed and all that. So.
Yeah. Seriously, TV can be like this on any subject, but I'll tell people a gun on TV is like a silencer in real life, and a silencer on TV is just make believe. It's just fantasy land. That's not how this works, right? There's nothing like that out there.
Right. So, we're still on the hunting kick here. I'm a waterfowler, and I hunt in Connecticut, in New York too. Now, Connecticut, I think you can own a suppressor or silencer in 41 states legally, and then 40 of them you can hunt with it. So, of course, Connecticut is the one state you can own it, but you can't hunt with it. But do people use suppressors to hunt waterfowl with, or to, upland or whatnot, or?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there are several. There aren't as many good shotgun cans as there are rifle cans, but there are several. And it's for me personally, I will always use a suppressor even on my shotgun, especially if I'm out by myself or a small group where we all have them. As soon as you get into a group where not everybody's suppressed, I'll tend to ditch mine too, just because of the the length and weight, it's not worth it anymore, right? And the shotgun cans too tend to be bigger and heavier. I mean, you just look at the shell on those things, right? There's a lot of powder coming out. You need a big can to contain that, the blast.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, with waterfowl, and when you're hunting in areas where you're 501 feet from a house, and it's 6:31 in the morning, you obviously want to be cognizant of that, and just if you have the option to shoot suppressed, that'd be good. I haven't researched it enough, so it's good to hear that is a potential one.
Yeah, Jim and I were just discussing earlier about hunting versus other application, target shooting or whatever, and home defense, of course, comes up, and it's like we both kind of agreed. It's like for home defense, now if there's somebody in my house and I'm trying to take care of my family or my possessions, I want everybody in the world to know about it when I'm when that shotgun goes off. I don't really want it suppressed. I want the neighbors and people half a mile down the street to know I got a problem. So
the problem is that so we deal with a lot of like police departments, and I know this is off topic for this show, but police departments where they'll use weapons inside without any kind of hearing protection just because they don't have time. It's coming out of the holster, they're using the gun, and it is permanent, irreversible hearing damage that occurs. If you can throw a can on there, even one of the super short ones so your ears won't be bleeding, man, I tell you, it's worth it. Now, you don't have time to put it on, but if it's already on there, sheesh, I highly recommend a can for home defense.
Yeah. So when I was at Kentucky, I was, of course, by the nature of my position, I was the head law enforcement officer. So I had to go through qualification every year and, day and night quals and all that. And we were at hearing protection for certain shooting activities, but there were others, some of the tactical stuff, it's just not practical. So you're right. You're still, you're damaging your ears every time. And it's something you don't get, I don't think you don't get it back. It's like it's eroding away and it doesn't come back. So my highs are gone. A lot of my highs are gone now, but I have bought into the suppressor world. I tell you, it's one of my favorite tools.
But I'll tell you what, at Outdoor Stewards, we don't do as much following some statistics that what I used to do at National Shooting Sports Foundation. But I remember I used to submit a FOIA request to the ATF to get Form 2, 3, 4. How many Form 4s were being submitted on an annual basis. And I kind of looked back at those numbers, and I want to say in 2010, it was about 25,000. And then in 2020, it was like 525,000, like a 2,000% increase. And I imagine now, 2025, it's probably close to 1 million. Like, are you guys seeing, is it just that? Has it growth that much? Yeah.
It is the growth right now. It's been crazy for years. It's the only real down year we've had since I've started in this business was probably 2017. But and that was just because of a lot of political changes and legal changes at the time. But it's been on that growth trajectory you're talking about since I started. And right now with lower wait times, man, it's like our biggest problem is we can't get enough, right? So there's no wait from ATF. But the manufacturers can't produce enough, so you're kind of in this backwater line. Not as bad as ATF, but it's still frustrating. I can't wait for that to work itself out.
Yeah. So speaking of the political impacts, I know at least the last Congress, maybe the last couple of Congresses, we've had the Hearing Protection Act was introduced, and we haven't got it passed yet, but. Basically, I guess what it does is removes suppressors from the NFA law, so we would be like the rest of the world. If you want to protect your hearing and your shooting, just go buy one. How does that impact a business like yours? I mean, obviously, you're as a distributor, it increases sales, but as a facilitator of the process, that part. That piece
you're right.
Away. Yeah,
you're right. The way I view that is, and seriously, it'd be anybody's guess. They'd still be treated as firearms under HPA. But my suspicion is the market would explode to a point where, I mean, really, this market should be 20 times bigger than it is, right? That's the reality. So I suspect our sales would grow significantly, but our market share would probably shrink. I mean, that's the reality, right? It'd be good for our business, but it probably wouldn't be great for our market share, right?
Obviously, other people would jump into the business then I guess, to try to be a retailer, distributor, whatever. Yeah.
When I was with NSSF, and talked, I tried to avoid politics, still do, but I remember them saying, it's really hard to get rid of something, a revenue source for the government. But one of the things that I think was more promising was the tax stamp revenue bill that redirects some of that $200 into conservation. Is that something you're familiar with as well? Or?
I am. Yeah, and it's funny. I'm a little torn on that bill. So it's the redirecting conservation. I am 100% on board with that. I think that's a fantastic idea. If the government's going to take that money from shooters, let's redirect it to conservation, range development, all those things, right? I think everybody agrees with that. The part I disagree with, and this is hopefully not super surprising or controversial, but I worry a little bit about the redirecting money back to ATF. I've talked to people who have dealt with redirecting money to agencies before, not necessarily ATF, and it always seems like a good idea. And 10 years from now, 15 years from now, we'll be hearing on the news about how the entire agency went on vacation to Hawaii for a week, right? It's hard to control that once you redirect at a blanket amount to an agency. So that's the part of it that worries me, honestly. It really does. But the conservation part, man, I'm all for that. I think that's great.
Well, I think your concern is shared by a lot of folks. I mean, at the state level, federal level, whatever. It's as a former agency head, I love to have my dedicated funding for my licensed dollars, but I saw other agencies get block grants or block funding for. And you're right, it's a blank check for them to do whatever it should be to do what they're supposed to do, what their mission is. But a lot of times they color outside the lines.
Oh yeah, I think that stuff can get out of control pretty quick.
And I know John was the director of Kentucky DNR and worked a lot with industry. And it's not just, your first tier industry that pays an excise tax on guns, ammo, rods, reels, bows and arrows, but it's companies like Silencer Shop that, you're into conservation, you're into hunting and target shooting, you understand it. Now you said you're in Texas and you worked with the Texas Youth Shooting Sports or Hunting Shooting Sports. Did you ever get to work with the DNR down there, Texas Park and Wildlife, or are you working with some conservation groups?
The conservation groups, yes. Man, I tell you, I love just the entire conservation industry, right? For the most part, I support everybody I can, right? But as far as actually dealing with state like Texas Parks and Wildlife, those guys, my only experience is the game wardens.
Hopefully in a good way.
Yeah, in a great way. I've had a great experience with those guys. Some of them will call me on my cell phone, but it's just a good group. But it's that's been my only exposure.
And that's one of the reasons why we're doing Connecting with Conservation. Is it's always been a frustration that you've got 50 great agencies, doing all this hard work and getting their hands dirty and hands wet, building everything from boat ramps and buying new properties for increased access and doing, research on wildlife diseases. And I mean, they're really the ones that take care of wildlife, right? But they get paid by people that hunt, fish, trap, and shoot. The bottom line, and gun owners out there, and they most of them know it. And but we just would love to see more folks work together, because we've got the same customers, we got the same interests, we want to see more people outside. So that's one of the reasons why we're doing the Connecting with Conservation for sure.
And, to add to that, it's we're a stronger community when we have that sort of message together as a wall. It's, hey, conservation in this country is funded largely by the purchase of firearms, ammunition, boat gas, archery equipment, fishing and angling equipment, and then the licenses that support those. And, for folks that, some of our biggest critics, either from the suppressor standpoint, firearms, or just hunting in general, they don't get it, that the fact they like to see bees and butterflies and, squirrels and snakes, but they don't know that all of that stuff is being paid for by the people that they're opposed to on almost every issue. So
it's what one side of that too is you think about as soon as anything is commercialized. So think about hunting. Hunting has been commercialized, and the industry itself is motivated to step in and support hunting as a result. You actually end up with a healthier animal population. You end up with better parks and places to go and outdoor areas because it's all supported by hunting. and by hunting companies. Other countries have seen similar things. Once you see animals that get delisted as endangered, and all of a sudden the populations explode. It's the craziest thing. You wouldn't think it would work that way, but anyway.
Well, we're hoping that our audience is the group, that we've tailored this to, is, maybe not have that message yet, but that's the message we're trying to convey, is that, everybody that buys or uses or sells a suppressor or a firearm or whatever is not bad. We're paying for conservation. They're tools. And a lot of people don't think of that. They take these things personally. And it's like, these are tools to get a job done or to recreate with. And it also as a benefit supports, a lot of the non-game species that they like to recreate with. And the areas they like to recreate on. One of our biggest costs that we use excise tax dollars for in Kentucky was, believe it or not, operations and maintenance of wildlife management areas and shooting ranges. Not sexy. You don't write articles about it until somebody shows up at a range and there's trash everywhere, or they can't get in because the gate's locked or the roads are in poor condition. And then they just wear you out on the phone. Why isn't this fixed? Well, that's so the excise tax goes there to make sure things look nice, that they're usable, they're nice facilities, and there's places for people to go. People would still buy firearms if there were no animals. We couldn't hunt anything in this country. They'd probably still buy them if there were no public shooting ranges, but not at near the levels. And they certainly wouldn't use them at the levels. And that's really what we're about, is making sure people know how that system works, and go make those purchases. Go try hunting. Go try target shooting. There's plenty of people who will teach you. And we have models that show how that works and how you can go from from a non-shooter to a shooter, a hunter to a non-hunter to a hunter. So mainly it's just trying to get that message out.
Yeah. So, well, target shooting certainly is, a big part of it as well. Do you have good ranges around where you are, or you still need some extra access in your area as well for getting out there and doing some target shooting?
We have some good ranges, and it's funny how you see like there's almost a campaign against ranges, right? And as the neighborhoods kind of start to encroach, we've got a range behind our house. I'm going to guess here. I'm going to say maybe it's 3 or 4 miles back there. I stand out there on a Sunday and I can kind of hear the pop, 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 and I think this is America, right? But I don't think all my neighbors agree with that, right? But they've been there since before I lived in Texas, right? They're a kind of a staple. They've held through, and there's a range that was, 15 miles north of here, a giant facility that lasted maybe 10 years before they were finally just driven out of business. And I think now it's a storage facility. I actually go to a private range, and for me, that's awesome. I like it. I badge in and use it whenever I want, right? But yeah, I think we've got some good ranges. You just see the struggles they've got.
Right. And that's where suppressors come in handy, right? If you're out there shooting suppressed, you're not bugging the neighbors quite as much. So I know on Silencer Shop, you've got kind of a 5-step process on how to purchase or go about getting a suppressor. So why don't you walk us through that?
It's pretty straightforward, really. We take care of pretty much everything. So step one is buy the suppressor. You buy it off our website, silencershop.com, or you walk into a dealer, one of our 7,000 dealers, buy a suppressor there. Either way, you fill out your registration information is step 2. We've got kiosks all over the country. Takes, usually 5 minutes to put your information in. You're good to go. A lot of times there'll be documents you need to sign. That would be step 3. We'll generate those through DocuSign, just on your phone or computer, however you want to do it, sign them. And then the last 2 steps are really with ATF. So creating an account with eForms, which is harder than it probably should be, but you do have to do it, and then certifying the form through eForms, right? We count those as 2 steps. So that's really the 5 steps. Really, and I used to end this with the hardest part of the whole process is the wait. But the funny thing is now it's like that's just changed so fast, right? You get them, you buy it on a Monday, you've got it by Thursday. It's a crazy world. I never thought we'd see this, and it happened so fast.
So it used to be the wait. Now it's the government forms is the hardest part. There's a shocker. So question about your process. So do you, with your kiosk, do you live scan fingerprints there now too? Or do you still have to, folks still have to go get their own fingerprint cards?
Yep, we live scan the fingerprints, keep them on file. So if you buy the first suppressor you buy from us, it's exactly what I just described. After you've bought one, the registration information's in, it's done, right? So you can skip that step. And creating the eForms account is obviously done. So it really becomes a 3-step process after the first one, right? You buy, sign, certify. That's what it boils down to. It's pretty easy.
Well, I'm in the market for another one here anyway, so you may just got a new customer, because anything that keeps me from having to go to the sheriff's department, get my fingers inked and printed, which is the way I did it old school, and it seemed like I had 3 days of driving around to different places to get the documents I needed to go to my dealer just to get the application in after the first suppressor I'd already bought, and then still waited 16 months until it was all completed. So it was just a horrendous process, but I'm glad y'all gotten it streamlined, and certainly glad that they've gotten the turnaround time better.
I know there's been a lot of innovation. Like we talked about the huge increase in the number of them, but there's been a lot of innovation, lighter, probably you don't have to clean them quite as much. You don't get clogged as much, and a lot more options, a lot more manufacturers out there. So kind of what do you see as next for the innovation, and, are prices coming down, or, is there a new material that you think is going to be good? What do you see for the future of the industry?
I really think, and I've seen a lot of changes in the last 15 years, right? Suppressors of today are not at all the same as the suppressors back then. For me personally, and I'll just kind of interject this, for a hunting suppressor, I tend to look for short and light. Quiet is like the last thing on my list for hunting. Hearing safe is all I care about, right? I'm getting in and out of four-wheelers, on and off horses, in and out of blinds. Man, that if you had 8 inches on your gun, that starts to become a real problem, right? So a little 4-inch super light can. I also like locking mounts, which I think I might be the only person in the world who says that, but the last thing I want to deal with is a can coming unscrewed while I'm moving around. I move around a lot when I'm hunting, right? As far as new developments, I really think the future of silencers is 3D printing. And right now, for most people, 3D printed cans are probably beyond the means of your average buyer, right? And your traditional cans are really good. But I'm starting to see stuff on 3D printing that just is like, this is the future, right? And the prices are high, but as they come down, I hope they come down. It's going to be a changed world. They are quieter. There's less blowback, less flash. They're shorter. They're lighter. It's like they're magic. It is a crazy thing.
Yeah, you took my next question away from me. I was going to ask about 3D printing and how that impacted the suppressor market, because I actually built a 3D printer and have tried to print some things. And, the innovation just in the last 5 years since I did that on 3D printers, well, the prices have come way down, and the tolerances are way down now. They're much tighter, and you can even print stuff in metals. Now you send it off, have it centered once you print it. But it's like you can make a metal product on a 3D printer in your house these days.
You think some of the things they do in traditional manufacturing just to increase accuracy and reliability and repeatability, they've got these wire EDM machines to keep the bores all aligned. There's all this stuff that goes into the process. With 3D printing, you basically pull a can off these 3D printers are super high end, but you pull a can off that and every one is exactly the same, almost to the molecular level, right? It's like I said, that everything about them is just unreal. Once again, super expensive. You'll spend more for a 3D can right now. But
I would expect that.
Yeah,
I would expect that's coming down too, as it gets scaled up.
Yeah, I hope that's true. I hope we start seeing the other problem with 3D printing. I'll just throw this in there. The 3D printing, the companies that are big into 3D printing are not gun companies. And the gun industry, as a general rule, struggles with non-gun companies because investors and third parties will start putting pressure on them to stop working with gun industry. So I worry about the day where 3D printers start booting out suppressor companies. Right. We'll see how that impacts us.
Well, Dave, we really appreciate you coming on, and and, connecting suppressors with conservation. We appreciate all that Silencer Shop does for conservation. And, you're out there buying your hunting license and your family license and supporting conservation. So we appreciate all that, and explaining, that's not all that hard and the wait times are down, and go ahead and get out there and make sure you're in one of those 41 states that you can own and get more information. Let folks where we can find more information, your social media, your website.
Yeah, silencershop.com. I mean, that's really the main place. And if you're not in one of those 42 states, just move is what I would recommend. It's
or call your legislator.
Move back to the United States. We'll welcome you. But silencershop.com. We're on all the social medias, just Silencer Shop. I'm not a social media guy, so I can't, don't know the lingo, but you can get everywhere from silencershop.com.
Outstanding. Well, Dave, thank you so much for coming on. You definitely got a new customer here today. If you can check the box. Yeah, I've done what I needed today. I recruited another customer because I'm gonna get on and buy a suppressor. I need a small bore. I need a rimfire suppressor. So you just sold me on it, especially with that process and the decreased wait time. So, but thanks. Yeah, thanks for what you do. I appreciate you being a supporter of conservation, both from your products and I noticed the black book there behind you and our discussion about hunting. Thanks for hunting and buying licenses. That always helps support conservation. As you know, it's our conservation is funded in our country. And to our listeners and viewers, please listen to this one and other podcasts. I think you'll find them interesting, and certainly subscriptions always help. So subscribe to our podcast and you'll get notifications as each new one comes out. And other than that, thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the woods or on the water.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Connecting with Conservation podcast. Please do us a favor and tell your buddies, friends, family, and others about what you've learned here today. If you like what you heard, come on back anytime and listen to another episode of the Connecting with Conservation podcast.